it's overwhelming, but it's also our jobs.
Mm-hmm. Our job is only going to get harder.
It's worrisome.
This is something that's unprecedented.
Now is not the time to be a cowboy. No one has anything to prove. We're all in this together.
Welcome to Reporting from the Front Line of a Pandemic. I'm Lauren Granada, and I'm here with Ross Lippman, videographer and editor at WGBY in Springfield, Massachusetts. Ross, thank you for joining me.
Sure, no problem.
My first question for you is, how have you had to adjust the way you work with everything going on with COVID-19 right now?
Yeah, so I think everyone that works in news in some capacity has had to make some pretty dramatic changes to how they work. So I work for New England Public Media, which is the PBS and NPR stations for Western New England. I'm a part of a show that's called Connecting Point, which is it sits in sort of two interesting places. It's both a current affairs show as well as sort of like a magazine-style news program. So I'm a part of the group of people that help produce and go out and shoot and edit the magazine-style long-form stories that are a part of the show. So as a team, we don't operate on that day-to-day hourly basis that local news affiliates do, where if you go out and shoot something, it's going to air that night at 5 and then a different version at 6 and then again at 10 and 11, that sort of thing. We're working more in weeks ahead. We're planning our stories out because they're very long. They're 5 to 7 minute pieces. So when the immediacy of COVID-19 became clear, we had to start making some changes to the general workflow of how we were producing our stories to air in the show. Mm-hmm. It became pretty clear that right away there was going to need to be an emphasis on having public figures and authorities in medicine be the primary drivers of our show, from the in-studio standpoint where our host does the interviews with everyone. But we also felt like the people that have a role out in the field needed to make some changes to not only be able to do stories that were appropriate during this time, but also we needed to start doing them in a responsible way that reflected the behaviors that we were reporting on, and how we were telling everyone that you need to maintain social distancing, you need to be responsible about where you're traveling, who you're interacting with, and how you're doing it. So, the majority of my job is going out and filming stories. So once it became clear that we needed to change not just what type of stories we were doing, but how we were going out and doing them, there were so many questions that needed to be asked. It was, okay, how am I capturing sound when I'm going out and shooting stories? Like, I can't be putting a wireless mic on people anymore. Mm-hmm. Can't be handing them a wireless mic to put on their person. A stick mic is okay, but I can't be too close to them when I'm interviewing them. So it really brought to light how everything changes once you start thinking about maintaining an appropriate amount of space between you and the people you're interviewing. So we had to build special tripods to be able to mount our microphones onto, and we needed to start shooting from further away. And then from there, it was we didn't want to just report on how heavy of a burden this is on everyone. We still wanted to do some lighthearted, happier stories. So I've been really making personally in my stories a concerted effort to do more positive and uplifting stories to remind people that there is goodness still going on in spite of all of this.
That's awesome. How hard has it been to work with reporters that you go out with and, working with a team physically at a distance? How hard has that been on you?
So I'm as of now, and we are still, everyone's still learning as we're going along in terms of what the relationships between all of our coworkers are going to be like. But every story that I've reported on since 2 weeks ago has been primarily remote interviews, as in I've been doing FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, Google Hangouts type of interviews, and I've been particularly interested in trying to capture what it's like for people who are needing to interact with one another digitally right now.
Okay.
So I did a story about a music school teacher who is still trying to stay connected to his students. So what he's doing is he's doing like sing-along hours every Tuesday with all of his students that his parents allow them to get on Google Hangouts. So I'm literally capturing the entire story through my laptop, or I'm doing all of the interviews just like how you and I are right now through video chatting through our phones. But when I do go out, as of now, I've been going out on my own, and I've really only been getting B-roll of places that are important, like hospitals, colleges, businesses that are closed, churches, places of worship, things like that.
Okay.
So as far as working with reporters, I've really been on my own, and we're all working remotely for everything else when it comes to emailing, writing our stories, editing, everything else has been done remotely. So I've actually kind of converted like the spare room in our home into like a makeshift interview space that I've been able to do the interviews for on my laptop's right over here. So I've been doing all the editing from there. So the most challenging part is just staying in touch with everybody, and not just staying in touch with everybody in terms of communicating like what needs to be done during the day, but also like checking in on one another to make sure everybody's feeling okay, that it hasn't become too heavy of an emotional burden to be doing this at the same time as whatever else it is that you might have going on in your life. So it's weird to not be seeing your coworkers every day. It's amazing, in my opinion, how much of a difference that face-to-face interaction makes in terms of team building and, establishing good working relationships.
Mm-hmm. What kind of a difference has it made on?
Well, it's made it so that you really got to think about how much you know your coworkers and what you sort of are anticipating that they do on a regular basis. You really need to take into account, who such and such is, what they contribute regularly, and what can I anticipate them doing. And then also being patient in when you don't necessarily get a response back right away. Our executive producer for our show is so incredibly busy right now. I mean, he is being pulled in a lot of different directions, as is every person that's probably in a position like his. So, hey, if you don't get a response right away, it's okay. He's probably taking care of something that's pretty important right now, and just having the patience.
Okay. And you said that, you're working from home and a lot of people are at your station. So how are you maintaining the balance of work and home if you have to bring work into that home environment of yours?
Yeah. It's hard. I will admit that I'm finding that I was able to sort of shut the door a little bit better when I was going into the office every day, and it allowed me to kind of compartmentalize that. I am finding my brain at 7-8 o'clock. Say I get an email with some videos that I had asked for from like a family that I'm doing a story on, and what it's like for them to be, quarantining one another or something like that. It is weird to be like, all right, I could just walk right down the hall and start going through those pictures or that video and throwing it into my story. But I'm like, it's not going anywhere. You just gotta wait till the next day. So that has required some discipline, and I think that's probably pretty common in our profession, because everybody is so so work oriented. We're always, the job is inherently always on your mind. It's just a matter of to what extent you allow it to be on your mind through every part of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it has required some kind of reminding of myself, hey, I'm home right now. And that's important too, especially when everyone's going through something as difficult as this. You need to take that time for your mental well-being and your emotional health.
How are you dealing with that, with the stress of, obviously you're covering something that is on everyone's minds. That's part of your work. And then you're also having to deal with that own kind of worry.
Yeah, I'm just going to hang up this phone call that's coming.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah. So how am I dealing with it? I think I'm doing fine. I really do. I'm at a point in my life where I probably don't have as many responsibilities that other people do. I have no children. My wife and I live here together, but we don't have any kids or anything like that. My parents both are not. They don't have the type of jobs where they need to be going out and working and being at risk of interacting with other people every day. My brother does not live very far from me, so I'm able to keep in touch with him. And I do think that being in news, it allows you to have a perspective that maybe other people don't, in the sense that you've covered hard stories, you've seen really bad things happen, you've needed to rise to the occasion and be calm, cool, and collected when others may not necessarily have to do that. So I think once it became clear that this pandemic was going to hit the United States in a particularly hard way, I sort of just said, okay, listen to experts, go to trusted news sites, be vigilant, but stay calm. Take all the right precautions, wash your hands, don't touch your face,
Mm-hmm.
stay socially distant from others. And I think if you just kind of like take it one step at a time, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You can be okay.
And what's your advice for anyone wanting to go into broadcast journalism?
Just in general, not having to do with COVID-19.
In general, but also with what's going on now. Yeah.
Well, I think this is a really good instance that you may think you want to get into a very specific aspect of journalism. So for the 6 years prior to me making the switch to working in public media, I was a sports anchor and a sports reporter. And I worked for different local affiliates. Burlington was my first job. And if I had the mindset that, I'm just a sports guy, I just like to cover games, I just like to talk to coaches and players, I wonder what it's like for people who had that mindset now that the only story that matters is COVID-19, because you need to be able to adjust when something as big as this holds as much space as it does. Everything right now in terms of what we're reporting is framed through the lens of this virus and how it's changed the world around us. So you need to be flexible. You need to be willing to go with the story rather than trying to keep turning it in the way that you had your heart set on it originally. You're just there to kind of like observe what happens and tell the story from other people's perspectives, not from your own. In terms of like getting into the business and things like that, I'm by no means like a super hardened veteran. I've been doing this for less than a decade. I'm 29, so I'm not like some well of wisdom, but you're gonna have to make a lot of really difficult decisions, and some of them you won't even realize had a big consequence until 1, 2, 3 years later down the road. But your career is going to be filled with all these different choices you make, whether it's what job you take, what job you say no to, what stories you pursue really hard versus what stories you sort of let slip between your fingers. I mean, every choice, every decision you make will have some sort of impact on your career, but it's sort of an exercise in futility to get really caught up in the results. But I think it's more important to just really enjoy the moments that you do have, and don't be so focused on like what's the next thing, or there's no such thing as like a stepping stone job, in my opinion. Everywhere you go is going to be really valuable, not just for your career as a professional, but for you as a person. You're going to learn so much about yourself, and you're going to grow. And the thing that I've been really thinking about for myself lately is it's really amazing. It's really amazing how much you change in only a small handful of years. I mean, I just think about the person that I was when I was at your point in your life. And I get another phone call. I guess I'm really popular right now while I'm trying to do this with you. When I was, you're like 22, right? 22, 21-ish.
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like I'm such a different person now, as is the result of most people's lives. But It's just crazy all the things you'll experience, the places you'll live, and just really like enjoy all of it. And I would say especially for you, because you're getting a job as an MMJ, right?
Yeah, I am.
Really, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is really, really become a good photographer. Like really embrace the aspect of your job as a video journalist. It is like the most essential tool that you will have. The better you are at capturing images and sound, the better a writer you're going to become, which means the better of a reporter you're going to become. Like really embrace just being like a total like camera nerd as much as you can, because that was the thing that turned the corner for me in my career. And I think most people that work in the business today would probably say the same.
Ross, thank you for taking the time to talk with me, and thank you for all the work you're doing to keep us safe and informed. And thank all of you for watching this episode of Reporting from the Frontline of a Pandemic. I've been talking with Ross Lippman, videographer and editor at WGBY in Springfield, Massachusetts. I'm Lauren Granada.